Hey, welcome to Jeremy Snell's Recruitment Training. If you're looking to deepen your capabilities, if you're seeking to improve your productivity and your performance, this is the channel for you. In every episode, I will unpack practical and tactical things that you can do to help you to think with greater clarity, make better decisions, and ultimately make more money. Feel free to subscribe, feel free to like and to comment. And now let's get on with today's topic. Hey, welcome to the episode, and this episode is 100% dedicated to training. And already I am going to change that. It is not 100% dedicated to training, it's 100% dedicated to learning and development, a component of which is training. Because in my experience, and if I just validate my experience for a moment, I've spent the last 13 years running my own business, working as a learning and development professional with the recruitment industry. I've supported 13,000 consultants across a wide variety of different businesses in all sorts of geographical territories, in all sorts of different sectors and marketplaces, operating at all sorts of different levels. I feel I could boldly claim, if there is a marketplace out there in recruitment that an agency works within, I reckon I have worked with an agency who specialises in that niche. And because of that, I've seen what it takes to succeed. I'm painfully aware of what it takes to fail, and I have an explicit understanding of the relationship between training and performance development. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see recruitment agencies make is they put way too much emphasis on the training element, and training then falls short because there isn't enough attention being paid to what happens afterwards. And in fact, I would add even further to that, not enough attention is paid to what happens before. Because training itself is an event. And when you go on training, I'm sure you've been there too, right? I can remember being sent on training courses by recruitment agencies that I worked for when I was a consultant. Jeremy, go on this training, it'll be good for you. Oh, okay. And I would turn up on the training, and perhaps it was a day or 2 days. I'd have an awareness that the subject might be something like advanced selling skills. And I would sit there and take part in presentations that were being delivered to me, get involved in facilitated discussions, maybe jump up and draw things on a flip chart with some team members, like brainstorming icebreakers to share in the lift with a client on a client meeting. And it would be full of ideas, and there would be like epiphany moments of, oh, I like that, and that's really good. And then I would go back to where I worked, like day to day, like my desk. And if I was lucky, my manager might ask me for some feedback on the training. What would rarely happen is any kind of psychological contract being created between me and my manager on how they were going to help me over the course of the coming days and weeks to start to put together a plan as to what I wish to change, what I wish to hold on to, what I'm going to start to do more of, what perhaps I might do less of, to be able to make the time and space to be able to do more of other things, and then hold me accountable to it. And that lack of post-training plan meant that I was pretty much left to my own devices. It's totally up to you now that you've been on the training as to what you choose to remember, what you may accidentally forget, how purposeful you are with your planning, how diligent you are in thinking about the effective rollout of the content relative to the context of your current desk, and therefore the money that was invested in you is very much linked in terms of its return on investment to your own personal commitment and capability to be able to do all of those things. So in the business that I worked at, training was seen as being a nice thing to send people on, but because the expectation was that the training was the fix or the creator of the new consultant, little to no effort was put into the follow-up piece. And often managers were busy. And if it's not broken, it doesn't need that much attention. And so more attention was being put into other things. So quite often those of us who were contributory, those of us who were performers, didn't really get a great deal of support day to day to help us to become, I don't know, future superstars. Does that make sense? So the subject of training is dear to my heart. It matters a lot. Training is a really powerful thing to be able to give to people. But the return that you get as either the delegate, the participant, or the business owner who sends people on training isn't based upon what happens in the room. In fact, I would stick my neck out and say what happens in a training room, in whatever the duration of the training, it's probably responsible for about 15% of the success of the person after they leave. You send someone on a full day of training that is all about business development, and they spend 7 hours scratching notes with a pen on a pad, listening, asking questions, maybe doing role plays, and you then expect them to be able to come back to a desk that they haven't been sat at for a day. The first thing they're going to do is to catch up on all of the stuff that they've missed. The next thing that they're going to do is to catch up with the people that they haven't been around. And if they haven't got a meaningful plan that has been structured as a wireframe as to what they're going to follow, a third of what they consumed in training is already in danger of being forgotten. So if you're going to invest in people, if you're going to invest in yourself, whether it is training that you go on as a business owner, as a senior recruitment professional, or it is training that you send others on with the best intentions of helping them to become better performers, you've got to think about the contributory components that make up the 85% of the success of that training initiative, and spend less time focusing on what happens in that room for the 15%. So if I break things down for you in the way that I see it, if 15% of the success of training is what happens in the room, I believe that 30% of the success is what happens before the person enters the room. So if you think about somebody going on training, a pet peeve of mine, in fact something that fucks me off a lot as an L&D professional, is particularly bringing experienced people into a room. So imagine that a business has paid me some money, and let's make no bones about it, it's good money. They pay me good money to turn up for a day. And they decide that they want a collection of people who are experienced recruiters to get orientated with how to succeed in today's marketplace from a business development perspective. So let's call it advanced sales for people who should already be selling more than they currently are. Does that make sense? Maybe people with 4 or 5 years experience who aren't necessarily hitting the numbers that they used to in the past. People who probably do need some training rather than simply some coaching. They may have forgotten some of the skills that they started the industry with, or they may have joined the industry in such boom times they have convinced themselves that they're a salesperson, having never had to do any selling in their life, because all they've done is spec out candidates and agree terms with hungry clients who come back and want to interview those contractors or those perm candidates. But I'm digressing. The thing that really pisses me off, you get those people into a room who recognise, when looking in the mirror, that they could benefit from being more productive. They could benefit from improving their own performance. Some of them even recognise that the drop in their current commission is very much linked to the drop in the job flow or the consistency with which they are generating new clients. But they come into that environment and I say, what do you really want to be able to get from this? What is the thing that you want to take away that would have the most significant impact on your performance? And they look at me and say, well, I've been doing this for a while, Jeremy. So what I really want is just a good refresher. I just want a refresher. So because they've turned up for a refresher, one, it means that they are hoping to hear things that they already know, because it helps them to be able to endorse the fact there is very little need for them to actually learn or to grow, because they need to be refreshed on things that they know from the past. Two, it shows they have no real understanding as to what their current strengths are or their current weaknesses are relative to business development, because they've neither thought about it with enough depth or been encouraged to think about it with enough depth by the person who paid for the training. Three, it starts to show that they don't really have that much faith that turning up in this room is going to have a significant impact on the results that they generate. So they've already started to disassociate between the content of the training and their own personal expectation of improvement. And as they disempower themselves, they reduce their own perception of the need to fully pay attention, and they're just going to let it wash over them. So because those things piss me off, like really grind my gears, I now deliver training, and will only deliver training where there has been a meaningful conversation with the senior leadership within that business as to how we are going to get people prepared mentally to start to think about the purpose of the training to them, why they are going to do it, what they intend to learn, and what evidence that they have that that is the thing that they need. Because if they don't do that thinking, they're just going to let it wash over them. And if a business isn't willing to hold people accountable to coming up with a pre-training analysis of self to start to identify personal strengths, areas of improvement, performance analysis of recent results to start to identify where do I need to focus my attention, there's very little point in the event. So that's why it is 30% of the success of the program. The content delivered is still 15%, so we're at 45%. So if you are with whomever, whether you choose to do it with me, you choose to do it with anyone else, you book some training and you have a collection of people who you want to get better, and you don't have a meaningful conversation with them prior to the event to actually talk about goals, objectives, and evidence for said goals and objectives, you're in danger of throwing your money away. The trainer will take it because they're being paid from your perspective to deliver the training. The learning and development professional is less likely to take it because they feel that they're being paid to help to be able to generate changes in behaviour or improvements in performance, not simply turn up and deliver a training program or workshop. And if you have people who you suddenly decide at the last minute, hey Billy, why don't you go on that training? It'll be good for you. Like, you know that you're going to be doing selling later this year, so why don't you go in there now? It'll give you a good understanding of what's required. Billy isn't going to remember any of it. Billy isn't going to have the contextual understanding as to how to be able to put this stuff into practice when you finally move him from being a resourcer to a business development professional in 3 to 6 months' time. Wait until Billy is ready and deliver the training at the right moment so that Billy gets the most out of it. Then when we look at the final contributory component to the success of this training, 55% of it sits with the follow-up. And it's the consistency with which things are followed up that makes the difference. So if you're sending a collective of people, you personally are attending a training session that, for example, revolves around that subject of BD. After the event, the debrief. What have you learned? What have you taken from this? What are you going to be putting into practice? Where could you challenge yourself? What are you going to start to do differently? How's that going to look? How are you going to remember to do that? What tools do you need? What support do you need? Like the debrief after training sets the tone for the following weeks. Because if you're the business owner, if you're the manager of that person, you now become their coach. Whether that is light touch coaching to help to keep on reminding them of the things that they're in danger of forgetting, to help to be able to ensure that they are allocating the right amount of time to the purposeful practice and you are reviewing with them how they feel they're getting on, or it is deeper level coaching, actually skills-based coaching, real-time coaching as they are putting into practice the content that they've taken from training. Much of that depends on your style, much of that depends on their level of capability, their experience, but nonetheless they need some coaching. And that coaching delivery needs to be on a little and often basis, because repetition is the mother of all skill. And as we encourage people to work with repetition so that they do the reps of the newly acquired knowledge to start to turn it into behaviour, even the experienced, and for those of you listening in audio, I'm doing the fingers in the air with rabbit ears, the experienced consultants who wanted the rabbit ears refresher, those experienced consultants who simply wanted a refresher, they then have to sit at their desk and start to come up with a plan as to what am I going to start to do because of this training event. And as a manager, as their leader, as the business owner, however we wish to frame it, we have a responsibility to support them, to help them to become the best version of themselves. And that starts with setting the right standards. What are the new standards that we're going to operate to now that we've done this training? And as we agree the standards, and those standards that revolve around behaviours, that revolve around expectations, that revolve around activity, as we set those standards and we agree those standards, it is the new standards that creates the confines from which someone will get practice. And now that we have standards, now that we have clarity on what is being practiced, now that we have clarity on what is going to be done through repetition to create the contextual learning as to how to get good, we can create accountability. And how we create that accountability is ensuring that there is clarity at the beginning of the week as to what is being practiced. There is a pit stop midweek to see how that practice is starting to develop in terms of performance and capability. And we have an end of week review. So if you decide that your business would benefit from some training and you nominate a group of people to go off and do some training, 30% of that success is what happens before, 15% of that success is what's actually happening in the training environment at the point of delivery, and 55% of it is linked to what is happening afterwards in terms of debrief, in terms of objective setting, in terms of standard setting, in terms of accountability loops, and the quality of coaching post-event. So if somebody goes off on training for, say, 4 hours, I don't think it would be that much of an extension to really think about, well, if someone does 4 hours of training, perhaps that person is going to need the equivalent of 16 hours of purposeful practice, repetition, and coaching. So we can't simply expect that somebody goes off to training, gets reprogrammed, and comes back a better version of themselves simply through knowledge acquisition. In every single industry, in every single profession, there is a definite gap between what people know and what people do. Our job as business owners, our jobs as coaches, our jobs as managers is to help to be able to close the know-do gap by helping people to become more empowered to practice with purpose in the context of the people that they're interacting with, using the content that has been given to them in training. And that, my friends, is what's going to start to produce a better quality set of results from the training which is delivered internally or externally across your business. And if you find yourself as a business owner, in your opinion, investing in training and starting to see it as being a cost because there is a lack of return, you may want to reconsider how you approach this as a learning and development exercise rather than simply a training process. Because the moment you start to look at how people learn and how people develop, you'll start to see what a relatively small component the training is. Integral and important, but a very small component in the incremental improvement over time of people's performance. And as we all know, our results ultimately are a symptom of our performance. And if we're not focused on our performance, our results are simply linked to the performance of the market, not the performance of our team. A high-performing team will outperform a market. A team will track a market based upon market conditions. So yeah, let me leave that as the final thought. You reflect on that for a moment and you think about the results in your business, your perceptions of performance, and whether you are putting that performance as being under the control of the market conditions, or that performance is under the control of the performance of your team and what they're doing and how they're doing it, to be able to start to define a high performance culture within your business. So look, I'm in danger of overrunning on my own goals with this podcast. I want to try and keep things within the confines of 20 minutes. So if you have any questions or any thoughts about what I'm sharing in terms of training and how to be able to get the most out of it, you know where to find me. If you're interested in the membership that sits with the 4D recruitment method, check out my bio. You'll see that there are some links there. And I look forward to seeing you, meeting you, encountering you at some point in the very near future on one of the many channels that you'll be able to find me on. See you soon. Hey, thank you for watching. If you want to continue to get access to more high quality training and coaching ideas to help you to stay inspired as a recruiter, make sure that you like, make sure that you subscribe, and check out the description below for relevant links to tools, frameworks, and other ideas to keep you moving forward. And I look forward to seeing you on another one very soon.